Welcome to the Newsa-Cast YouTube channel. These Red Smith Banquet throwbacks are exclusive interviews of sports legends, powerful media personalities, and influential coaches. You won't find these anywhere else. Subscribe below and enjoy. Well, already, Tash, it's that time again, once again, for the Red Smith Sports Award Banquet Throwback. Tash, this year, or this episode, I think I did that last time, this episode will go back to 2004 once again. We just had Herb Kohler. He won the Red Smith Award that year. Well, that year, we also had Sean McDonough was our featured speaker, and you've seen Sean all over your TV screen for years. He does football, he does basketball, he does it all.
Yeah.
He at the time he was a CBS Sports announcer. We had a great stretch at the Red Smith Banquet. We had 4 out of 5 years we brought in CBS Sports announcers: Vern Lundquist, Bill McAtee, Sean McDonough, Bill Rafferty. Most of those guys we've had on the throwback already, so go check out the archives. But yeah, Tash, Sean McDonough, he was a great one. Yeah. We had fun after the banquet. I remember that, and he
went out to have some beers. But this is Sean McDonough is just a classic announcer. I mean, he's been doing announcing since 1982 when he was with the Syracuse Chiefs. He was the play-by-play for radio. He's done Olympics. He's currently the NHL on ESPN, NHL on ABC. He's their lead play-by-play. So if you get a chance to watch the NHL on TV at all, you can check that out. He still is the radio play-by-play for the Boston Red Sox as well. So, he's a classic announcer, career announcer. He does a great job. He, like you said, Joe, it was a good time that night, hearing stories and just shooting the crap about sports, which is always a good time.
No, absolutely. When you have a career like that and a Boston guy like that, you're going to be filled with stories, and they came pouring out that night. In a January night, 2004, at the Radisson Paper Valley Hotel, Sean McDonough.
I've got a few things most of us don't know about our main speaker, such as his favorite musical group is the Little River Band, favorite sport movie is Caddyshack, and his favorite food is chicken parmalinga. Lena, I believe it is. He didn't get that tonight. Sean McDonough began his broadcasting career in 1982 in Syracuse, New York, as a play-by-play announcer for the Syracuse Chiefs of the International League. Our speaker is a very versatile and highly respected announcer whose resume includes play-by-play announcing at CBS, ABC, and ESPN, covering the NFL, National Hockey League, men and women's college basketball, golf, tennis, and the Olympics. 15 years as the television voice of the Boston Red Sox. Sean McDonough is a 4-time winner of the New England Sports Emmy Award for outstanding play-by-play for his work on Boston Red Sox baseball. Sean has a reputation of being a solid, well-prepared announcer that is not afraid to offer his opinion. Please welcome Sean McDonough.
Thank you very much. I realize that I'm Pastor's last hope to get his wish up here tonight, so this is going to be faster than a Britney Spears annulment. Matter of fact, Mike Reese told me we'd like to be out of here by 10, so thank you very much for coming, and drive home safely. Yeah, I know you've been sitting a long time. Some of you are probably too polite to get up and leave, and if you want to do that, I want to allow you the chance to do that. And I'd like to think of this for the moment as the 7th inning stretch. We're really in the 9th inning, but the 7th inning stretch, and I'd like to ask your indulgence for just 10 seconds. If you'd all stand, let's clap. Show me some of that Fox Cities area enthusiasm that you're famous for. Cheer like you're Howard Dean, finishing 3rd. Big standing ovation. Actually, I kind of used you guys there a little bit. I know maybe some of you wanted to stretch, but you had my good friend Vern Lundquist here last year, and he told me it was a great group, but sometimes unresponsive. I said, I'll bet you $100 I get a standing ovation when I walk right up to the podium. So now I have the picture to prove it. Jim, thank you for coming up. I'd like to ask the 4 people who have not been introduced in the room to stand and be recognized at this time. That ought to cover everybody. Can go home happy. You get all 4 of you? Actually, Vern Lundquist is still mad at me. We did the Masters together at CBS for 4 years, and our producer, Lance Barrow, is kind of famous for malaprops and not getting the name right. He's a Texan with a hard drawl to understand. He's always talking in your ear, and he's the guy to tell you which hole to throw it to and what to go to. And you remember John Van de Velde, who had that terrible misfortune at the British Open. He kept hitting the ball in the water. Hopefully something that dramatic will happen in your tournament. But he was playing in the Masters, and I was on my hole, and but it was a hole that I couldn't see. When you're in the tower doing these golf tournaments, you're on one hole, but you're doing the commentary for 3 or 4 other holes, so you rely on the people to tell you. So they go to a golfer in the middle of the fairway. I don't recognize him, so I set on my talkback button into the truck to Lance Barrow. Said, "Who is that?" He said, "The Frenchman." Something, there's several Frenchmen here at the Masters. I said, "Which one?" He said, "Jean-Claude Van Damme." So shortly after that, we had a rain delay. We all had it was the first round of the Masters. We all went into the compound for a few minutes, and Vern and I were talking about stuff like that, messing up names and embarrassing stories. And Vern told me a lot of very funny anecdotes about things that he had messed up that were embarrassing. And we go back after about an hour of thunder and lightning. We're back in our towers. They resume golf, and you probably know the golfer, Stuart Sink. Stuart Sink. He was in contention. And I was on my hole in the 16th hole, and they said, "Mayor, throw it to Vern at 14. I said, "Let's go to Vern Lundquist at 14. And the first words out of Vern's mouth after the blooper talk and after the rain delay, when I said, "Let's go to 14, he said, "Where Stuart Stink is putting for par." So he's been mad at me ever since. He blames me for putting all those blooper thoughts in his head. I want to commend you, Chuck. I know how hard it is to MC these dinners, and you've proven that tonight. And and Joe, that was a beautiful introduction. Excuse me, Judge Troy, in case I misbehave later tonight and wind up in your courtroom. But that was a beautiful introduction, but you've certainly handed down sentences that weren't that long. Let's face facts. Who else can I dump on? Who's out there? Mike Reese called me. I had heard about your banquet from Vern. I was excited when he called me. I was a little disappointed because when he started out, I thought he was engaging me in a conversation about the First Amendment. He said, "Do you believe in free speech?" I said, "I'm a journalist. Of course I believe in free speech." He said, "Good, come to Appleton in January because you're going to give one." So here I am, the midnight show in Appleton, in fact. I'm a little nervous, I'm going to admit. I was looking at our ratings. I've been doing ESPN Friday night college football and big Monday college basketball, and I was checking our ratings the other day, and it dawns on me right now that I'm not used to speaking with this many people listening. This is a big crowd for one of these deals. I was at one of these about a week ago in Pittsburgh, and hardly anybody showed up. Similar kind of, youth sports banquet. I said to the gentleman running it, what's the problem here? Is it ignorance or apathy? And the guy running it said, "I don't know and I don't care." So this is impressive, this kind of enthusiasm and turnout. And I'm well aware of the enthusiasm for sports in this state. I've been here many times covering sporting events. I want to congratulate all the honorees. I knew a girl in college named Jean the Machine, but I don't think she got that nickname from her involvement in youth sports. Think they're going to leave that on AM 1570 or in the replay or what? We might test the Wisconsin FCC censors here, but bear with me. I want to add my good wishes to Pat Richter. Pat, you did a hell of a job at Wisconsin. Yeah. Those in the other room are probably wondering, what were they laughing about? Thank you for the camera. I hope they have the screen. We have people in another room who are listening to this. But Barry Alvarez, I love college hockey. They're up to number 6 in the country. Coach Eves, I know. He's terrific. I think the basketball program at UW is the most underappreciated program in the country for what they've accomplished the last few years. And Pat has done a great job. I want to congratulate Rob and the Timber Rattlers. It's obvious you have a great franchise here. I thought it was a big deal for me to be a Major League Baseball broadcaster when I was 25, but to be the president of a minor league team at age 16 is something that it's really impressive. Your mom just called. She'd like you to come home now, though. If you Tom Crean is one of my best friends. He truly is. Most of what I'll say here tonight is true. I think Tom is the best young basketball coach in the country, and if you're a Marquette fan, you're in great shape there. So is UWGB with one of his disciples, Todd. I know you're going to have a great run here, and I hope you're here for many years to come. Ken, congratulations to you and your entire athletic program. At UWGB, 3.11 combined grade point average. I went to Syracuse. I think if you added up all our teams, we got to 3.11. I want to congratulate the Brewers. Well, they've left, so I can dump on them later, which is good. But I think the future's bright for them. Doug Melvin was with us for the Red Sox for a while. He's great. Gord Ash is great. It was a treat to meet Scott Podsednik. What a classy young man. I thought he should have been the Rookie of the Year this year. And I think for now the outlook you ought to take with the Brewers is what we did. When I was at Syracuse, I worked for the great football coach Dick McPherson. And the first couple of years when he got there, he later went on to become the coach of the New England Patriots. The first couple of years he was there, we weren't very good. One year we were 0-4. Coach Mack was very colorful. And I'll clean this up a little for the youngsters who are still here, and in respect for the ladies. But and I'm trying to think how I can do that. He had a press conference when we were when we were 0-4. A reporter asked him about the attitude of the team. 0-4, what's the mood around the team? He said, well, nobody's doing cartwheels to the locker room. But as I said to Sandra, his lovely wife, last night, I said, honey, football is like the most intense, intimate, personal male-female relationship physically that you can have. You know what I'm saying? That should have been 3 letters what I wanted to say. It's like that. He said, when it's good, it's great. And when it's bad, it's still better than just about everything else. So when you watch the Brewers, remember that. And the Packers. I've been in town for 12 hours now. How long's the dinner been? About 12 hours. And I've been in town for about 12 hours, and I've heard already about 10 times today, 4th and 26, 4th and 26. I'm so sorry, 4th and 26. Now, you got to remember, with the Red Sox, we had Pesky held the ball. We have Bill Buckner. We have Bucky Bleeping Dent, as he's known in Boston. Now we have Grady Little leaving Pedro in the game. I don't want to hear about 4th and 26. You got a long way to go. And when I think about all those things, I just think about how fortunate we are in Boston and New England to have a Major League Baseball team. And I'm particularly reminded of that when I come to a place like Wisconsin where you don't have Major League Baseball. No, I wasn't going to say it, but they left, If I'm going to clap for the third assistant director of marketing for the Brewers, they can stay and wait for my speech. You know what I'm saying? You hear me what I'm saying? You stayed. You got nothing to do for about 365 days, so. You guys have a ticket manager. What does he do? You're sold out for like 50 years, right? What do you do? Is he still here? Yeah. No wonder he snorkeled. He just got nothing to do. But I mean everything I said, all the nice things anyway that I said, and I would never, just say something like to suck up for a cheap, suck up to the home crowd kind of thing. Would never do that. That was to cut the glare as much as anything else. By the way, if you're wondering, the sauna comes with the price of your ticket here tonight. It's not any extra charge. And of course, one of my favorite people ever, Al McGuire, the late, great Al McGuire, with whom I had the chance to do many games at CBS. What an unbelievable man. First time I met him, he got up to speak at a seminar at CBS, and the microphone didn't work, and so he just put the microphone down. He said, "Don't worry, I've been around more dead mics than an Irish undertaker," which I thought was an interesting way of putting it. You know, at these seminars, they bring the announcers and all the producers. Everybody's going to work on the NCAA tournament into New York, and everybody likes to hear themselves talk. That's why they get into broadcasting. And they were talking about how we can prepare for the tournament. They're saying, oh, you know, some of the announcers, well, I downlink the games on my home satellite dish, and I, you know, talk to the coaches. And so they decided they're going to send tapes to all of the analysts of the teams, the 8 teams that he's going to have in his first round site. And Al raised his hand, and I thought to myself, finally, somebody's going to say, there's a coach that won a national championship. He's going to say something we can use in the tournament. And he raised his hand. And he said, don't bother sending me the tapes. I don't have a VCR. Which, he was a little forgetful when you worked with him. You know, he was a great guy. I did a game with him at Boston College one time, and he had to borrow shoes from the manager and a sport coat from the trainer. And he was doing a game with Vern Lundquist on Saturday on CBS, Boston College against Seton Hall. And unfortunately, Seton Hall had a player named Brian Caver, whose dad had been killed in a car crash, and Brian had his dad's initials on his wristband. During the game, Al got confused, and there was a player for Boston College who went up the court who happened to have a wristband on. And Al said, there's Malcolm Huckabee, and he's got a wristband on, as you can see. And on that wristband, he has his dad's initials because his dad recently was killed in a car crash. That was on a Saturday. On a Monday night for ESPN, Bill Raftery and I came in to do another BC game 2 nights later. We weren't aware that Al had said this. And the BC parents used to sit right behind our broadcast position at Boston College. And up comes Malcolm Huckabee's dad. And he said, and this is a true story, I promise you. He said, we said, how you doing, Mr. Huckabee? We'd done a bunch of games there. We got to know the parents. He said, well, I'm okay, but could you do me a favor on TV today? He said, yeah, what is it? He said, can you mention that I'm not dead? So he explained the story. So, you know, Al was a wonderful guy, but a little sensitive, and we didn't want to hurt him. And Bill Raftery especially was one of his dearest friends. They were fellow coaches. So we thought, well, how can we get this in? And Bill said, just let it go. Don't say anything. Al will be mortified. He's so sensitive. Just let it go. I said, we got to let the guy's family, his wife's been getting calls for 3 days that her husband's dead. He said, let it go. So you know, Bill, as soon as they control the tip, you know, he says, man, that whole thing. So they throw up the ball. BC controls the tip. It goes to Malcolm Huckabee. And Bill said, Georgetown opens man-to-man. And Malcolm Huckabee has the ball for Boston College. And his father is here tonight, and boy, does he look terrific. Glad we weren't going to talk about it, you know, and nobody has any idea what he meant. You know, that's the other thing. What a oblique reference. But Bill, like many of my people, suffers from Irish arthritis. He gets stiff in a different joint every night. And I see that spread around this area a little, too. My family, a lot of them have Irish Alzheimer's. We forget everything except the grudges, which are common in Boston. You had Billy Packer here a couple of years ago. He's a practical joke. We were doing a game at Purdue. The hotel we're staying in had a bridal exhibit, so we had a little time to kill. He said, let's go look at this. They're just setting up, and as we walk up, he says to the woman, could you tell me where the booth is for same-sex marriages? I'm like, Billy, when he points at me. He says, my partner and I are here for the booth for same-sex marriages. Had a lot of nightmares, but none that bad. It's an honor to share the dais with people I really admire. I've known Dave Collins a long time. Grew up watching Dave play, obviously, as a lifelong Bostonian. My parents actually had a similar experience to your mother, driving. My dad passed away about a year ago and was a wonderful man and had a lot of friends who are here in the room, and I appreciate all the nice wishes, and especially from the Packers. But he was a terrible driver, and one time he and my mom were in the car, and my dad got pulled over, and he said to the officer, "Why'd you pull me over?" He said, "Well, you were speeding." And my dad said, "Oh, I don't believe I was. It's 35 miles an hour," and I was going 34. And my mother said, "No, you weren't. You were going at least 45, and I told you to slow down, and don't give the officer a hard time." So my dad kind of shot her a look, as he could do in his South Boston Irish way. And then the police officer said, I couldn't help but notice that you don't have your seatbelt on. He said, "Well, I did have my seatbelt on, but to get my license and registration out, I had to take it off." And my mother said, that is not true. Matter of fact, I've been telling you for 3 miles to put that seatbelt on, and you just wouldn't do it. So with that, my father turned to her and said, "Would you please shut up?" And the officer leaned in the car and said, "Ma'am, does your husband always talk to you like that?" And she said, "Only when he's been drinking." But Dave Collins, when you watched him play, when I watched him play as a little kid, I knew he did not, you just appreciate it. He did not know, playing against all those big, taller guys, he did not know the meaning of the word fear. And then years later, when I got to know him, I realized he didn't know the meaning of a lot of other words either, most of them, as a matter of fact. And he gets credit for this toughness, and he was tough. I mean, it'd be 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", 6'9". 6'9", what'd you play? 6'9". You've grown a little. And then, like most of us, you'll shrink later. But to get all those rebounds, you have to be tough. But Tommy Heinsohn, who, everybody I mentioned has been at this banquet. It's amazing. Tommy was here, like 20 years ago, I believe. And he was the coach. And when Dave was a rookie, he called Dave and some of the other rookies in and said, "You guys think you're hot shots and you think you're tough, but you're not tough." Now, Tommy was tough. And he still is tough. He's the announcer now for the Celtics. He's the biggest homer in the world, but he is the announcer for the Celtics. One time he said that Abdul-Jabbar had pulled out a knife and stabbed Larry Bird during one of the games, so that's how big a homer he is. But Tommy said, "I'm going to show you guys, especially you, Collins, how tough can be." And he had a little paper bag, and he had an alligator in there, and he took the little baby alligator out, a little baby one, and he put it in a very, very, very precarious part of his anatomy, and the jaws snapped down, and blood flew everywhere, and it was gruesome, and they all turned away. And finally, Tommy took a pencil out of his pocket, and he stabbed the little alligator in the eye, and the jaws flopped open, and it went on the floor. Stunned silence, as you can imagine. Dave recalls it well, around the room. And Tommy Heinsohn looked around the room, and he said, "Now that's tough. Do any of you think you're tough enough to do that?" And Dave raised his hand, and he said, "I'll give that a shot as long as you promise not to poke me in the eye with that pencil." $15.70 news time. I don't know if that one will get through either. And what you said about Herb Kohler was exactly right. I mean, the lack of ego, and I think I did my part accidentally tonight to help that, because when I first got here and saw him surrounded by the TV camera, I said, "Wow, I can't believe he's here." And I went over and I said, "Mr. Rogers, I have all your records." And I... I helped with the ego thing, And I mean, it was a great speech and very interesting, but anybody who plays golf with me and my buddies knows the synergy between toilets and golf. I can assure you of that. I live in this is a golf crazy area. I read something like Wisconsin and Minnesota have the most golfers per capita and the most golf courses, and I'm not surprised. And you have a lot of great courses in the state, and none better than yours, Mr. Kohler. We commend you because it is a masterpiece, and I think it's going to be an unbelievable test of championship golf. But we have examples in my area in Boston about how people, like a lot of places around the country with golf, no matter what the circumstances, they just can't tell the truth about the score. And we had a tragic example of this in my neighborhood a couple weeks ago. I heard the sirens, and I went running over, and the police had responded to a call down the block from me. And when they came out, I asked a friend of mine, who was the detective, what happened. He said, "Well, we walked in, and there was a gentleman standing in the middle of the living room with a golf club up over his head, shaking uncontrollably, and there was a woman lying on the floor who appeared to be dead." I said, "Oh, gosh, I know these people." And so we said to the gentleman, is that your wife? And he said, yes. Yes, it is. He said, did you kill your wife with that golf club? He said, yes. Yes, I did. He was almost inconsolable. He said, how many times did you hit her with that club? He said, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, but put me down for a 4. A lot of people ask me tonight how I got started in broadcasting. A lot of you probably want to know why I got started now after this, but I was a baseball player, minor league baseball player. Appreciate what you have here. And I knew it wasn't going to last very long when they used to bring me in to pitch in relief. You know, a lot of times during the breaks they would they bring out the rakes and they drag the infield, smooth out the bumps. When I would come in from the bullpen, the ground crew would rake the warning track. So that the outfielders didn't hurt themselves as they, and then I got this uncontrollable twitch in my neck that went away. So they said, you got one last chance, but you got to be a hitter because you can't pitch. And I knew that was coming to an end. I went up to bat, and you know, it's a very small crowd. You could hear the transistor radios. I could even hear the announcer up in the booth. And I heard the announcer through the transistors. I wrote this down verbatim. As soon as McDonough makes the final out, we'll have the postgame show. So now I just play softball in South Boston with my Irish Catholic, you know, it's a great Irish Catholic neighborhood, as you know, and an interesting softball team. We have Jimmy Fitz, Billy Fitz, Bobby Fitz, Tommy Mack, Timmy Mack, Johnny Mack, Sully. A lot of Irish guys. So I had to get out of playing and get into broadcasting. I started out doing minor league baseball, as Chuck said an hour ago, making $14 a game, and that came back to haunt me early. I got off to a bad start in broadcasting, too. I was coming out of the park one night. I felt something on my back. Stick your hands up. This is a stick up. I said, oh, come on, buddy. You know, I'm making $14 a game. I'm just a poor announcer. And the guy said, I know. I was listening to the game tonight. I did make it onto the Red Sox later on. It was a tough year to start. 1988 I started. That was the Wade Boggs, Margot Adams relationship. And a lot of tension on the Red Sox, a lot of tension. I got in trouble early. We had a pitcher named Oil Can Boyd. And he, in spring training in Winter Haven, Florida, forgot to return 3 movies to the video store. And they were, you know, Debbie was one of the titles, and something about kittens and heat was another one. And as you can probably tell by now, maybe I'm a little bit of a smart guy. And on the air, I refer to it as the Cannes Film Festival. And so that got me in trouble. Oil Can pitched a game in Cleveland in the old ballpark before Jacobs Field. And Dave will probably remember this. He was probably in Boston when it happened, and the fog came rolling in off Erie. Just came thick as pea soup. They stopped the game for about 45 minutes, and finally the umps came out and they hit fungos up in the air, and you couldn't see the ball. They called the game. 6-inning game, official game, 2-0 shutout for Oil Can. So we go down to interview Oil Can after the game and said, what do you think about that development? And he said, that's what happens when you build a ballpark right on the ocean. He wasn't a geography major. We had our manager, Butch Hobson. One year I told him during a little conversation before the game that I was doing a football game that weekend, he said, they keep you busy. I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I've got to go to Lillehammer, Norway, where they're having the Olympics for the World Bobsled and Luge Trials on Thanksgiving weekend in Lillehammer, Norway. And Butch looked right at me and he said, that's in Sweden, isn't it? So I knew we were in trouble with him. Our previous manager was John McNamara, who for 2 years called me Sean every day, and then I had him on a TV show, and he looked at the graphics, and he said, that's how you spell your name, S-E-A-N? I said, yeah. We came on the show, and I welcomed him, and nice to have you here, John. He said, well seen, very happy to be here. I knew we had no future with him. We had the always interesting Roger Clemens, who said he didn't like to be misinterpreted, or obviously not at UWGB on one of your athletic programs, or taken out of content. which I didn't understand when he said that. I asked him one time about pitching on an extra day of rest. He said he didn't like it. It made him too erotic. And that first year, I'm working with a guy named Ned Martin, who was a great broadcaster. God rest his soul. He just passed away about a year ago, too, and he should be in the Hall of Fame. But he was a little mistake-prone at the end when I was working with him. And one night, we're doing the game, and Roger Clemens is in the early part of his career, just pitching great. And Ned said, you know, all the things I appreciate about Roger Clemens, I think the thing that I appreciate most is his work ethic. He is definitely an alcoholic. He meant workaholic, but I'm still not sure to this day. And we had the legendary public address announcer, who I know Dave and all New Englanders love, Sherm Feller. If you were at Fenway Park, if he's got a legendary deep voice, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, call your attention to the American League rules. And I was at his first game that he did as a PA announcer when there was the fans along the right field line had put their jackets, you know, it's in early April, it got a little warmer during the game, they put their jackets over the railing. And Sherm said over the PA system, we'd like to ask the fans in the right field box seats to please remove their clothing. During this time that I was struggling with my relationship with the Red Sox, I got in trouble again one night on a late night West Coast game out in Anaheim. Red Sox turn a big double play. Jody Reed and Marty Barrett on the first. I said, that goes, you know, it's like 2 in the morning back in New England, so I thought it'd be clever. I said, that goes 6-4-3 for those of you who are scoring in bed. So we got the whole thing with Wade and Margo. I got the Cannes Film Festival. Now I've said this, I'm 25 years old, just want to, you know, have a second year in the major leagues. And I come home, and Sherm Feller had that booming voice, and he was hard of hearing, so he talked even louder when he wasn't on the PA. And I'm in the old press room at Fenway Park, and Mrs. Yawkey, who owned the team and was about 114 at the time, was at the next table. And, you know, I'm thinking, she's very reclusive. She doesn't even say anything. And have you seen these ads lately that are all over TV for Bob, the Enzyte guy, who's got the big smile on his face all the time because he's got a little more life in his step because of natural enhancement? Sherm liked to talk about his lack of a need for Enzyte. I'll put it that way so we're on the same page. So I'm sitting, I got my head in my lunch, I just want to be ignored, and Sherm walks in, and he says, Sean, you know, just 50 people in the room. What's a guy who doesn't need Enzyte to clean it up for you have for lunch? And I said, I don't know, Sherm, what? Just get it over with. He said, well, today I had a roast beef sandwich, French fries, and a Coke. And some of you will use that tomorrow at the office, I know. And last but certainly not least, my broadcasting idol was Harry Carey. And I know a lot of you people are Cub fans here and probably heard him say these things. He just said things that, you know, those of us who have nowhere near his credentials or longevity wish we could say, but we couldn't. You remember the Cubs, the White Sox actually, when he was there, had an outfield of Pat Kelly, who was notorious for having a terrible throwing arm. And they had Walt No Neck Williams, who was center fielder with no neck. And they had Carlos May, who had had his thumb blown off in Vietnam. And Harry said, you probably remember this, right now their outfield is no arm, no neck, and no thumb. You know, I remember he used to try to do the games out in the center field bleachers, really so he could drink, I think, and get away with it. But this bud's for me, he used to say on the billboards. But he had a hard enough time following the game when he was in the booth right behind home plate. So he'd be out there in center field. I was watching the game one day, and Harry said, swing and a miss. I don't do an imitation of him, obviously, but swing and a miss. He struck him. No, it's a line drive to third, and it's caught. And then Steve Stone chimed in, and he said, no, Harry, that was strike 3, and then the catcher threw the ball down to third. You know, Harry violated a lot of basic tenets of our business, like you don't chew or cough while you're on, or clear your throat all the time. You know, while you're on the air, you know, You people watched him. So finally, the guy who was engineering the radio got tired of Harry coughing on the air. And you're the engineer. That's your responsibility, the technical part. So he went to Harry. He said, "We're going to devise a system. When your microphone is on, this light bulb right in front of you is going to light up. And you just talk away. And when you want to cough or clear your throat, you just raise your hand. I'll kill your microphone. That light goes off. Clear your throat, raise your hand again, I turn your mic on, the light bulb comes on, go." System works great for weeks. One night, Harry's doing the game, he raises his hand, the light bulb doesn't go off, wants to cough, raises his hand again, the light bulb doesn't go off. He turns around, the engineer's not there, so Harry unscrewed the light bulb, coughed into the microphone, and kept going. And my favorite thing that he ever did, and I think I'll leave you on this because it is about that time. A cold weather game early in the season at Wrigley Field. And we have these at Fenway too. And they have the customary shot that you see of the fans bundling up under the blankets and with the jackets, and they're huddling and trying to keep each other warm. And they take a shot of a very affectionate young couple who are snuggling and cuddling, attractive young couple. And Harry, I had to write this one down too. Harry said, "They're playing the old ballpark kissing game. He kisses her on the strikes, and she..." He finished the sentence. And he was on national TV. I'm just on AM 1570 here where they're about to have their license pulled, if they really do. We have a lot in common, we New Englanders and you folks in this part of the country, not the least of which is the weather. And I think we've had our coldest winter in memory in Boston, and I think it's a good omen. I got an email the other day that gives us hope. It tells you what happens when the temperature gets to certain degrees. Dave was just trimming his plants. At 60 above zero, the Floridians turn on the heat. People in New England go out and plant their garden. At 50 above, Californians shiver uncontrollably. People in New England sunbathe. At 40 above, English and Italian cars won't start. People in New England drive with the windows down. At 20 above, Floridians don thermal underwear, hats, coats, and gloves. People in New England throw on a flannel shirt. At 15 above zero, New York landlords finally turn on the heat. People in New England have a cookout, the last one before it really gets cold. At zero, people in Miami die. New Englanders close the windows. 10 below zero, Californians go to Mexico. People in New England get out their winter coats. At 25 below, Hollywood disintegrates. Girl Scouts in New England sell cookies door to door. At 40 below, Washington, D.C. runs out of hot air. People in New England let the dogs sleep inside. At 100 below, Santa Claus finally abandons the North Pole, while people in Boston get frustrated because the car won't start. At 275 below, that's when all atomic motion stops, absolute zero on the Kelvin scale. People in New England start saying, "Is it cold enough for you?" And at 500 below zero, hell freezes over. But here's the good news, folks. The Red Sox or the Brewers win the World Series. I really admire what you're doing. I think this event is incredible, the magnitude and scope of it, and most importantly, what you do with it. I don't think there's much more that we can do in our society than to do things that help the young people of our country. And I'd heard so much about the warmth and friendliness of the people in this area, and I certainly have not been disappointed. If anything, you've lived up to that expectation and beyond. So thank you so much for honoring me by allowing me to be here tonight. And God bless you. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Your water.
Please subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when we post another great episode or interview. Download the podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for your support.